so let's look at this one. This one's asking us to simplify. Okay, we don't have to solve it, so we're just going to simplify by combining like term and using the order of operations here. So starting out with the order of operations, I see parentheses. Well, I can't combine anything inside that parentheses, so my next step is to distribute that into the parentheses. So I end up with 2x squared plus 8. And I copy everything else. Okay, you don't want to add that 5 and that 2 from the get-go. Be careful about doing those kind of things, because that's not right. Now from here I look for my like terms. Well, I have an x squared term and another x squared term, and I want you to treat that as 1x squared. And so 1x squared plus 2x squared is going to give me 3x squared, okay? Now I have two numbers, 5 and 8, so I'm going to add those together and get 13. Now I cannot add these together and get 16x squared, so don't even try to do that. This right here is your final answer. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Oh, look at this one. Oh, this is quite long. And you might see one like this. Don't let it intimidate you, okay? You really don't have anything to do in that parentheses. It's just there to hold stuff. It's just to look weird. So I don't actually have to do anything with that. So what I need to do is take that stuff out of parentheses. So I'm actually going to rewrite this whole... Whoops, I already messed up. I'm going to rewrite this whole thing all over again. With that stuff out of the parentheses, plus 2 minus 3x squared minus 2x squared plus 5 minus 4y plus 8y squared. Oh, this is barely going to fit. Okay, now I look for my like terms. So I'm looking at numbers. I have two numbers. So I'm going to combine those. Negative 5 and plus 2. That's not negative 5 minus 2. Don't let that minus x confuse you. Negative 5 plus 2 is going to give me negative 3. Now, I can copy everything, but I can also group stuff together that I'm going to add and subtract next to save myself some time. As long as you take the symbols, the correct symbols out in front, like that minus there, you should write it out properly. So let's go ahead and do my x's next. So minus x, that's one of them. And then I'm going to take that plus 5x, and then that minus 2x on the end. Sometimes it helps whenever you're done with stuff to cross it out like this. Took that, and I took that. So now they're not confusing me as I finish writing this out. I'm actually going to switch to another color to do my x squareds. Make it a little bit easier. So my x squareds are these guys. They're already grouped together, so I just copy them as I see it. Like that. And now I'm finished with them. Now left, I have my y's. But I can't combine them because one's a squared, one's a number, and one's a squared and one's just a y. So I'm just going to copy those on the end. I already know I can't put them together. So they're going to just come along for the ride. So let's do what we can combine. The negative 3 comes along. I have negative 1x plus 5 minus 2. That's going to give me plus 2x, okay? Because I end up with 4, and then minus 2 is going to give me a plus 2. Now I have negative 3x squared minus 2x squared, which is going to give me minus 5x squared. And last but not least, I'm just copying my y terms. Copy and copy. For this to be my final answer, I'm just going to go ahead and circle it, or just box it in, okay? And that's it. Alright, I can't combine anything else. Don't even try. Alright, yeah, you can have a lot of stuff here. It's not wrong, okay? Just letting you know that. This is alright. Alright, let's move on to the next stuff. We've got some word problems and some fraction stuff to look at, so let's do that. Alright. Now, this is saying that Mary has quite a nice income of $4,200 a month. She plans to budget half of her income for rent and 3/8 of her income for savings. So Mary is quite a frugal gal here, we see. And the first part says, what fraction of her income does she plan to spend each month on these two items together? So that's what we need to figure out. What does that mean is, if I know 1/2 is for rent and 3/8 is for savings, I'm going to have to add those up. Okay? So I'm going to take those two fractions, I'm going to add them. So 1/2 plus 3/8. Well, if you have a calculator, you can do fractions and add and subtract and multiply, divide in there. That's a good way to check. Most teachers do want to see some work here. So I need to get a common denominator. I know that 2 goes into 8. So I'm going to work with my common denominator of 8. So I'm going to copy the 3/8. Alright? And I'm going to write 8 here because that's my new denominator for that. So 2 goes into 8 4 times. That means I multiply the top by 4. See how that became 4 over 8? You always want to double check if you're not sure that go back to your calculator and see does 1/2 equal 4/8. You can test that in the calculator, see if it reduces down. And it should. If it doesn't, you might have made a typo or a little mistake whenever you're multiplying it out, okay? From here, I just add the tops. Don't add the bottoms. And so you end up with 7/8. That's a lot of her income, okay? So that's all they wanted, all right? And I can't reduce that. The next part says, what amount of money does she intend to spend? So in this case, I need to multiply. I need to take 7/8, and I need to multiply by her income, $4,200. Now, this step is something you can do in the calculator. I don't think most teachers are going to say you got to show work here, because if you did multiply it out like that and do 7 times 4,200, yeah, it's going to be a pretty big number. You can, but I would say it's not that necessary. So in this case, you should end up with getting this answer of 3,675 as your answer. So that's how much money she's spending every month for her rent and saving for her future. How frugal of her. Now let's go on to the next one. Okay. Now here's a couple questions. The first one says find the product. So one thing you need to know, because there's some word problems on the test, is product and quotient. Product means multiplication, and that quotient, I'm going to write it over here so you know, means division. Okay, a lot of people get those mixed up, so I just want to point that out. Now, if I want to find the product of 3/7 and 4/7, I don't need a common denominator. I don't need to do anything like that. I'm just multiplying straight across with fractions. So 3 times 4 is 12. 7 times 7 is 49. And I double check if that can be reduced. Well, 12 has nothing that goes into 49, so it can't. That's my final answer. Now the next one has a common denominator already. And it's adding me to add or subtract. You know, here it says find the compute the difference. Difference means subtract. Just want to let you know that, because that's another one that trips students up. So I do this 2 at a time. I don't try to do all 3 at once. And again, you can check your work in a calculator, but if you just write out the answer, you're not going to get full credit for a lot of teachers for these problems. So if I do 2 minus 1 first, if I do these 2 first, I should end up with 1/9. Now I just copy the minus 5/9. Okay, I'm just bringing it down. Now, if I do 1 minus 5, because again, I'm just adding or subtracting the tops here, I end up with -4/9. And that does not reduce either. So that's my final answer. Now the next one, this is one where I have to get a common denominator. I have these 3 numbers, 3, 8, and 4. And 4 goes into 8. So because of that, if you have a situation where you have like 1/4 and 3/8, ignore that 4. 8's your common denominator. 8's the one you're going for. So in this case, I don't even need the 4 to play anything into it because it goes into 8. So I need to figure out what's a common denominator between 3 and 8. Well, in this case, nothing of 3 goes into 8. So I end up with 3 times 8, which is 24. That's my common denominator. So I'm going to write it here. New fractions, 24 minus 24 minus 24. And now, what do I need to multiply all these by to get to that 24? So I did 3 by 8. So this was times 8, so I do the top times 8. So this becomes 8/24. This middle one, I multiplied by 3 to get 24. So I multiply the top by 3 and I get 9. This last one, I multiplied this by 6. I know that 4 had nothing to do with the problem, but I still have to do this part. Multiply the top by 6. And now it's 6. Now from here, just like in the other one, I'm going to do left to right, and I'm going to do just 2 at a time. I'm not going to do all 3 at once. So 8 minus 9 is going to leave me with 1/24. All right, and I'm going to have, oh, not just 1, I'm sorry, -1. I almost messed that up. Minus 6/24, okay? Now, that's a negative because 8 is smaller than 9. Now I have -1 minus 6. That's going to end up with -7/24. And I cannot reduce that one bit. So that is my final answer. I'm going to take this off a little bit, make that look more like a 2. Okay? But that's it. I can't do anything else. So I just want to let you know, this is how you do some of these problems like this. And I'm going to stop here, and I'll pick up on the next one.